Welcome to the Life Well Lived, Paving Your Own Way to Growth podcast. In this episode, we'll be meeting our new co-host, Gina Torres, talking to a little bit about who she is and what she's going to bring to the podcast. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Life Well Lived podcast. I am your now co-host, Justin Harris. In this episode, I'm going to be introducing the new co-host to the podcast, Gina Torres. But before we get into all of that, we're going to dive right into the quote of the day. And the quote goes, "The doors of opportunity are unlocked, but you never know unless you try and open them first." Now, the reason why I chose that is because of how this whole thing came about. So the last time I saw Gina was actually back in 2011. And then the next time we kind of spoke was actually on October 23rd. Now on Facebook, I made a post about my upbringing, about how I grew up, how I'm thankful for my upbringing because of how just not to beat around the bush, but of how poor I grew up and how that has shaped who I was today. And then after I posted that, almost immediately, within a few minutes to 20-30 minutes is when I got a message from Gina again. And she kind of talked about how we had very similar upbringings in a sense. I mean, we've known each other. There's not a time that I didn't know Gina, to be honest, if I can think back about it, if you really think about it. So we decided, we were just kind of chit-chatting, and then all of a sudden she was down in Florida for a wedding, and I live in Florida, and we decided to meet up. And after talking for quite some time, a lot of things were said during that meeting. A lot of catching up because it has been so long. A lot of just talking about different life things. And then I started talking about this podcast, and then the opportunity presented itself for us to collaborate and come together and to grow together in this journey. And that's where we are today. So today, I'm just going to give the mic over to Gina. She's going to talk a little bit about that day when she messaged me and about who she is. So Gina, take it away.
Oh man, like when you're in an interview and someone asks you like, "Hey, tell me a little bit about yourself," and you're like, wait a minute, like
yeah.
Who am I? Wait a minute, you just go blank, right?
Is Gina Torres?
Who am I? And then, it's like something that you really have to think about because it's a past, but it's also a present. But first of all, I want to say thank you so much for that introduction. I'm so happy to be here and for the opportunity to kind of reconnect a couple of weeks ago. Before I delve in, I think it's important that our audience has a better understanding of how we actually reconnected. I know you did a little bit of touching, on it right there, but an important thing to understand, and that I really want to stress with this opportunity episode, is that we're really always one decision away from a completely different life. And so literally 3 weeks ago or somewhere around there, you posted your status on Facebook, and it was, of your story, of your struggle. And it was something that really, spoke to me because, as you know, like we kind of went through a similar childhood. I grew up with a single parent as well, and kind of had a couple of different homes, different schools, no money. So it was a very similar thing. So really, after I saw that, I decided to message you and commend you for, first of all, being vulnerable, and to also let you know that you weren't alone. I think that's also an important piece too. When we're being vulnerable and when we're telling our story, it's also something that we want to hear is like, okay, I'm not alone in this. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay that I went through these struggles. But I also think that it's important to learn from it. So I guess to touch on who am I, right? Who is Gina Torres? With that long intro. So Gina Torres was born in Albany, New York, raised in Albany, New York. I went to Albany High, just like Justin, graduated in 2012. I began community college thereafter. I was a dual sport athlete. I was very in between on what I wanted to do. My first, I'd say, calling, well, what I thought was my calling, was to actually be a hospice nurse. And then I went through, I was like, okay, I have no idea where this came from, but all of a sudden out of nowhere, I was like, yep, I'm going to be a hospice nurse. I ended up starting some classes at Hudson Valley in nursing, and I absolutely hated science just in
Yeah.
general. So I was like, yeah, I don't think this is going to be the route for me because I can't even pass microbiology. So I went through, I still did my dual sport athlete, but instead of taking 2 years at Hudson Valley, I actually did 3. It was a very long struggle for me because I really could not figure out what I wanted to do. I went through nursing to physical therapist to sports nutrition, and then eventually criminal justice, where I kind of am today. So, after I got my associates in criminal justice, I went to the University at Albany, where I studied emergency preparedness, homeland and cybersecurity. I graduated from UAlbany, and then I started working for Homeland Security, and shortly thereafter became a police officer in Albany. I also knew then and there that after I became a police officer that I did not love that, and it wasn't my calling. So the next few years, which was my last few years of where I am now, was kind of finding what that calling was.
Right.
And, a few years rolled by and I became an investigator for the state, had the same feeling, wasn't my calling, which fast forward today is, I'm a financial advisor. When you talk about something from your past that you were never good at or never learned, and then all of a sudden that's what your profession is, it's like it became the perfect storm of, okay, well, I don't really know anything about this. Let me do my research. And now it's something that I'm very passionate about and, absolutely love. So in doing that, I work with young families and small business owners to help them get, finances in order. So it's one less thing that they have to struggle about.
Yeah.
And, I think I'd argue that one of the most rewarding things about my job is seeing myself in those families and helping myself at that young age and helping that whole family, lower that stress in their lives.
Right.
So that's me.
Yeah. No, thank you for that background. And you capitalized on the opportunities. I know when we spoke before, down here in Tampa, you talked about how that opportunity actually came about, which kind of fits again because you took a chance on another opportunity. So can you talk a little bit about how you got into financial advising?
Sure. So actually at the beginning of COVID was when I first started getting into, researching about finances, how to invest. I think that was kind of a topic in a lot of our lives, was how do we invest and make more money, because now we're out of a job, right?
Right.
So, luckily I was fully employed. At the time I was a police officer during the pandemic. So I was employed the whole time. It was a very stressful time. And again, I knew that it wasn't what I wanted to do, but so the more and more research I did, a little bit background on my mom, who is now a small business owner. She has owned her own business for, I think, 7+ years, but she never really paid into the Social Security system. So when I was kind of doing my research and background on finances, I was like, hey, what's a 401k? What's like this retirement account, Roth IRA thing? And I found out that she hadn't been paying into anything. As a small business owner, if you don't have a retirement account for yourself, or your employees don't have retirement accounts for themselves, you don't have a retirement. And I think that's an important thing that was like an aha moment for me. And I think the education piece behind that as well. So I went on and I looked at my mom's Social Security, and if she were to retire at 67, she'd only have, I think, $1,000 a month, I think it said. So with research and the perfect storm of kind of how everything happened, that's really how I got trajected in this direction. So
I just want to say thank you to everybody that is supporting the podcast at the moment. If you haven't already, I just want to take this time to tell you, please go ahead and like us on Facebook, the Life Well Lived podcast, paving your own way to growth. Like us on Instagram. We got a lot of good things coming. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, just a whole bunch of things that we're working on. So feel free to go ahead and check those out. Please follow, please share. Very, very, very much appreciated. Thank you.
So Justin, I know there's been some opportunities in your life as well. You've found your passion and kind of this stumble and fall route that I did. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more for us?
Yeah. So I was big into baseball. I went to college. I don't want to say I went to college for baseball, but I went to school for exercise science. Started off physical education, but exercise science basically at the end of it. That's what my degree is anyway. And I went to play baseball. Basically, I thought and believed that I was good enough to continue and go on to the next level. So that's what I spent majority of my time doing, was just specifically baseball. Um, and I mean, it is a sport, it is a game. So eventually there is an ending to it. You can't play forever. And what happened to me is I actually had a couple injuries. I had two shoulder surgeries that actually ended my career as a baseball player, and that happened during college. So it really put me down and into a funk for months and months. I shut myself out and didn't want to deal with anything, didn't want to deal with people. I barely talked to any friends or family, probably almost for a good year, just because I just lost what I thought was my life. I didn't know what else to do from there. But because during all of this time, I actually went to see a chiropractor with a friend of mine. Now, I actually skipped class and went with my friend to go to this chiropractor. For some reason, I was just like, yeah, I'll go with you. And as I was reading more into it, I was like, oh, this seems pretty interesting. And then I actually put it in my back pocket. I didn't think about it again for years. And then after the surgeries, I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. I was like, hey, I remember the chiropractic thing. Let me look into it. I looked into it, got my degree, I applied, and I applied for a class that started in October, and I pushed it off. I could have started in April of 2015. I could have started in April of 2015. No, 2014. I'm sorry. April of 2014. And I decided not to because of just some things that happened in college. And once those things didn't really work out, I pushed it off. I pushed it off to till October of 2015.
Mm.
Um, Continued to do some things in North Carolina. I was, just trying to, I thought about getting my master's. So I started that process. And as I actually went to go do an interview for my master's program, the guy I was interviewing was like, "Why are you even doing this? Just go to school." And I saw that as an opportunity. I was like, "You know what? You're right. Let me just do it." You know, why the door won't open unless I check, right?
Absolutely.
So I ended up calling the school saying, "Hey, is there a way that I can start a little bit earlier in July? I know I said October, but can I start in July now? I'd like to just get in there as soon as possible." And right on the phone then and there, they're like, "Listen, if you can make it in 2 weeks, you can start now." And I was like, wow, if I waited just any longer, I don't know if I would have been able to do that. So that opportunity presented itself, and I ended up going to school. I still have yet to be adjusted at that point. So I didn't even know truly what chiropractic even truly was. I was just kind of going, just taking this opportunity and running with it. And I got to school, I finished. I'm here today as a chiropractor and I love it. I'm so glad that I took that opportunity. I'm so glad that I continued with it. It was tough. Don't get me wrong. It was a long journey, but now I am where I am today because of some of the struggles that I've went through. And now a passion of mine is get helping people heal themselves. I'll talk a little bit about chiropractic and how it truly works at another time because I could talk more than you'd want to hear me talk about it. But um, so that's become one of my passions now. So I took that opportunity of me going through this injury to being able to help other people heal themselves as well. So that's a little bit about that opportunity that I took. I know there's other opportunities that we could talk about that we've all dealt with in our lives. There's many every day. There's a new chance for an opportunity. So, um, yeah, that's a little bit about that big opportunity. I guess that's the biggest opportunity that I've had in my life, I should say.
Yeah, and I mean, at any point during that, were you like, "Hey, I regret this opportunity. I regret this. Like, there's something that I regret about taking this opportunity or taking this leap or going through this journey."
Yeah, I know, to be completely honest. I don't think there was, like, as soon as I started, I was actually in a when I started the school, I was in a bad place mentally because of not only because of the surgeries, but because of something else that happened. And I was a mess basically for not the 2 weeks prior to going to school, I was a mess. So when I did finally start, as soon as they told me I can go, I don't want to say I was 100%, but I was like 90% like ready and felt good and felt clear. So when I got there, everybody that all my classmates, now my colleagues, they just made it made everything so much better that I instantly knew. I was like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I don't there's not one thing there that I regret doing. Um I can't say I'm trying to reach and find something. I really am, because the reality of it is like nothing's perfect, obviously.
Right, right.
There's nothing perfect about anything. Don't get me wrong, and I had my ups and downs. Um there were tough times, but I don't regret anything in that moment.
Right. And I mean, I think just to touch on that as well, would is it the opposite? Would it have been the opposite had you not gone? Would you have regretted not going? And I feel like something that we often kind of struggle with ourselves is if we
Mhm.
don't take the opportunity, then what happens? And then okay, if we do take the opportunity, then what happens?
Yeah,
I feel like anytime we don't take an opportunity, we do have some sort of regret or,
yeah,
hey, what would have happened if I didn't take this opportunity?
exactly.
And you actually saying that was kind of the point to my question. You did take this opportunity, and it's not something that you have regretted, even though it may
Exactly.
have seemed scary at the time, or like something that was, oh my gosh, like I have to start this in 2 weeks. I can't believe I'm doing this.
Right.
But had you not, and looking back, you probably would have been like, man, what if I went to chiropractor school?
You're
What if
right.
I started this then?
Exactly. There is a time that there is a decision that I truly do regret. But at the same time, it's hard to even say that because then I don't know if I would be where I'm at now.
Right.
So it's like, do I truly regret it? Or do I just I don't know. It's one of those things. So back in college, when I was still able to play baseball, I left the first school that I went to. I left because I wanted to come back. I wasn't happy where I was at. Um, so I wanted to leave. And in order, when you leave a school, you have to get a release from the coach or the athletic director to go play at another school. So that's what I was trying to do, but they wouldn't sign it. They wouldn't sign my release. So basically, I had to sit out a whole year.
Mhm.
What they decided to tell me after this whole process was that I was getting scouted by a different school, aka apparently West Virginia University, which I don't know if you know this. I'm obviously salty about it right now because they are very good in baseball. At least were at the time, good D1 baseball. And if I had just known that, or if they were truthful with me up front, then I could have continued in my baseball career and gone there and played for West Virginia, which would have been an amazing opportunity. And I think about it often. I think about like, oh man, I missed that opportunity. But at the same time, thinking back on it, it's like I'm not too upset about it. I think about it often, but I'm not too upset about it because I'm here. I'm doing something else that I love.
Right.
Um, or I found something else that I love because of an opportunity. So I think that's important to not to dwell on those past opportunities that you missed, especially if you've found another calling of yours. So is there a time where like there's an opportunity that you think that you've missed that you often think about?
Oh man, I guess similarly to you, I was actually supposed to play D1 softball. I
Yeah.
was heavily involved in softball
Mhm.
as well. I ended up having, kind of. I mean, I had tendonitis really bad, so I kind of had to pick: Am I going to, risk my health for, just to play softball, or do I actually want to, go through and have a career and be
Mhm.
successful? So it was something that I loved versus something that like I had to have a reality check for.
You're right.
And I think that was one of the most difficult times for me to kind of, break apart what's important now and then what's important for my future.
Right.
Not that I necessarily regret it, but it would have been an amazing experience.
Exactly.
But who knows what would have happened to me health wise.
You're right.
Um, I also have Lyme disease too. So like that was something that was catching up with me. And I'm like, all right, what would have happened
Mhm.
if I, actually did?
Right.
So I wouldn't say I regret it. I would say that it's something that, happened and I chose my path and I'm very happy with my path.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely it's also something like that. It's like, okay, I almost regret going or not doing this, but if I did it, would I have regretted that as well?
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's
that's a great
there's
way of looking at it.
there's these different ways of looking at things that are just kind of unreal. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to those. There's no right or wrong path because either path you take or you don't take leads to somewhere, and you're going to get. So the end goal might not be this, or the end result might not be the same in a sense of like, oh, if I went here, I would have still ended up a chiropractor. That I don't know. Or if I went here, I might have been drafted and became a professional baseball player. That I don't know because we didn't get there.
Right.
But the but the end goal still could have been the same of I have found something that I truly love and do. It's all based on the different paths and the different opportunities that you take. And that that was that's the point of this podcast today, was to kind of just go into and talk about how opportunities can help us grow and lead a life well lived.
Absolutely.
So before we wrap this up, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about? Anything else that you'd like to ask? I have nothing else to ask of you as of right now. Is there anything you'd like to ask of me?
No, I think, I
Oh,
think
yeah.
I'm all set too.
Perfect. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for listening to us talk about opportunities and how we met. Thank you, Gina, for becoming the new co-host of the podcast. I cannot wait to hear and talk more about different topics in the future. Everybody be ready, be alert and active on Facebook. Just there's a lot of different things coming. There's a lot of different things that we'd like to talk about. So check out those alerts, subscribe to us if you haven't already. Please share the page, share the YouTube, do what you can to get this podcast out into the world, because it's not about how many people see it, but I personally love trying to help people get to where they'd like to be, as I know Gina does as well. So we're going to continue to keep putting out some great content for you guys. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Absolutely. I don't know if you want me to touch real quick on the email to be interactive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
'Cause I know you can like kind of chop this, but I was like, I didn't want to make it in a weird spot. So
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Go ahead. And
and
actually,
it's lifewelllived@gmail.com, right?
the life well lived.
The life well lived. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't even know if I'm going to chop that out. That's a nice little thing. We'll just go for it.
Oh, you don't.
We're talking. Hey.
We're just going. Okay.
Yeah.
And so this podcast is truly informative and truly interactive with all of you guys. Feel free to email us at thelifewelllived@gmail.com and ask us any of your questions. If you want to know a little bit more about me, if you want to know about Justin's past, or any of the questions today about any opportunities, or maybe you had an opportunity that fell through, or that you want our advice on,
Yeah.
let's get it. Let's as more interactive as we can be is only going to better this podcast. So feel free, thelifewelllived@gmail.com, and we hope to see you guys then.
Yes. Take care.
Yes.